Hello, and welcome to this reflection on 2024, a year in review. I know it's February. I wrote this in December, but I'm just getting around to recording it now. Luckily, I think I was on the money with a lot of these trends. They're still as relevant now as they were when I first wrote this stuff down. But let me know what you think. Maybe I'm way off. Anyways, let's dive into it. 2024 was a big year, particularly for those of us working in government and public service. All right, so number 4, this move into a multipolar world. So my whole entire life has really been growing up in this unipolar world, a world that was really dominated by sort of a Western consensus about the world, organizations like the United Nations, World Bank. It was a unipolar sort of space. Now, really, that's shifting. China's obviously been ascendant for some time, but really 2024 is where you noticed this diversity of perspective and ideas. These different powers started to rise. BRICS has risen as sort of a counterpoint to a lot of this Western consensus. And on one hand, this is great. It means more perspectives get space, more bodies, more organizations are shaping the discourse and the world where we're going. But with this has come a lot more conflict and a lot more instability, and that trend is going to continue. Number 3, increased balkanization. So really coming off of the last point, we have lived in a world of free trade where borders are softer and people and money and ideas can move very freely between these different spaces. That's shifting. Borders are becoming much more important. You're seeing this with immigration, but you're also seeing this with tariffs. Now, Trump's favorite word, tariffs. Tariffs are going to become much more normal as countries start to assert their sovereignty and their borders. You're even seeing this with the internet. Different countries are starting to create their own internets and their own spaces. AI is going to be another place we're going to see this go, where people are going to be creating their own, different countries are going to be creating their own GPTs. Increased balkanization is definitely a trend. And in this sort of fractured world, informal networks are going to become much more important, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the work we're doing at Apolitical to build these global communities of practice. These soft networks are going to be really important to enable information sort of moving through and connecting with each other. Number 2, the rise of India as a kingmaker. I mean, we've been talking a lot about China as a key player, but India, I think, has in some ways become one of the most interesting and important players on the global stage because they've become the kingmaker between the East and the West. They are sort of playing the sides off of each other, and that is coming with a lot of influence. And part of that's also economic. They're a huge country, most populous country in the world now, and with that they become a real economic superpower that countries all over the world want to pay attention to. But the part that I'm really interested in is really their move around digital public infrastructure. I mean, countries like Estonia have been talking about this digital infrastructure for quite some time, but I feel like in the last year, India's made a big play, almost like a diplomatic play, with digital public infrastructure, making it as a tool for them to really have more influence, particularly in Africa. Similar to what countries have long done with physical infrastructure, India's now doing with digital infrastructure. But also, it's really helped raise the profile of this concept of digital public infrastructure, which is something that I'm very, very interested in. And of course, the biggest theme, by far and away from 2024, is elections. 2024 is the year of elections. More people went to the polls in 2024 than at any other point in human history, and it was almost a complete resounding sort of signal of rejection of the status quo. Incumbent parties across the board, it didn't matter whether they're left-wing, right-wing, centrist, incumbent parties were, for the most part, shown the door, or at the very least, saw significant decreases in their power, even in places like India, which was a real shock to a lot of people. But I think at a deeper level, what this signifies is a rejection of public institutions. Even stuff like science is being challenged in a lot of different places. And I think part of this, of course, is being sort of goaded on by misinformation campaigns run both domestically and globally. But I think at a deeper level, it's this feeling that government is failing to deliver on its promise. And people are frustrated. And in many cases, rightly so. They don't feel like government's fit for purpose anymore, and they want something different. This is, I think, an opportunity for those of us who work in government to really see this as a chance for us to do something different, to change the way this reform movement that you're seeing building. There's now a lot of political will for us to move forward a lot of the ideas we've been pushing for. Because many of us, if you're watching this channel, you've probably been a person who's been trying to improve and push for change in government. Now there's going to be a massive political will to drive this change forward and really bust through a lot of the inertia that I think has been holding us back. Some other interesting sort of smaller things. 2024 is the year of blue sky. For a long time, the civic punk movement, as I like to call us, we've kind of been dispersed. We used to be fairly active on Twitter, and obviously that's kind of gone sideways. So now there really hasn't been a common place. Some people went to LinkedIn, others to Mastodon. Mastodon. Many people just, checked out completely. Blue Sky seems to be this new thing that is really sort of bringing the community back together in a way with a lot of potential. I'm not sure what happened, but somewhere around August, all of a sudden the whole entire civic punk community in the UK went to Blue Sky. Canada followed a few months later, and other countries are starting to appear in. I'll be honest, I'm still on the fence with it. It's still, for me, I find a lot of noise to signal. The signal to noise ratio isn't what I'm looking for. I find LinkedIn more helpful. That said, the starter packs are quite interesting. It's a great way to sort of figure out who are the key people I should be paying attention to in a space. I did a lot of reading. There's some interesting books that came out. I want to sort of highlight 3. First things first, leading up to the UK election, Public Digital came out with their Radical How, which is a great read. If you haven't read it yet, it's sort of an update on the book that they wrote a couple of years ago on the digital transformation work that happened in the UK. It's sort of an update and a summary of it, really to provide a bit of a roadmap for the new Labour government that's coming in. It's a quick, short, you can find it online, definitely worth the read. There's also a Canadian version that's sort of updated on it as well. Then in the summer, I learned about Peter Ho's Menagerie. So Peter Ho is a very influential public servant in Singapore and retired this year. And so in honor of his retirement, a bunch of people who were influenced by him within the public service put together this collection of work. And it is just, it's really interesting. And the thing I think that was exciting for me is also it's a perspective that like so much of the discourse I consume is very West, it's very Canada, US, Europe focused. Singapore, different approach to things. And so there's a lot of really good ideas in this book. I encourage you to check it out. So that's Peter Ho's Menagerie. And of course, the third one is the one that has been getting a ton of talk this fall. That is, of course, Platformland by Richard Pope. Again, great read. I don't think there's any of the ideas in here are particularly new. There have been ideas that have been bouncing around the space for well on a decade. But what I love about this book is it makes it really easy to talk about. It gives us Richard's given us a common language, common ideas. I've got a quick summary of it if you're interested in getting some. I've created a PowerPoint on it. I should see if I can get Richard on this video at some point. Anyways, Platformland is that. A couple podcasts that I'm a big podcast listener. We're finally starting to get some good podcasts in the sort of civic punk innovation space. Maker, which is done by Nick Scott and Jason Pierman. Particularly season 2, which is the season that came out this year, is quite good. They're interviewing change makers in the public service who've inspired them and really talking about their journey. How did they get into public service and how are they able to create change? What did they learn? So it's a very sort of human journey, which I really appreciate. It's a great storytelling from them. So that's GovMaker. Think Digital, which of course is Ryan Andrusoff, another Canadian podcast. Woot Woot Canada. This is season 3. And here, Ryan Andrusoff just interviews people who are working in the digital government space in Canada and around the world. Some great stuff there. I discovered this year the Westminster tradition, which has been around for a couple of years, out of Australia, where they've unpacked the Robodebt scandal, which was a really big scandal in Australia a few years ago, and really from a public service perspective. What does this mean from a public service perspective? And then more recently, the post office scandal, which I believe is season 2. So definitely worth checking out. So that's GovMaker, Think Digital, and the Westminster tradition are 3 podcasts I've been listening to this year that I've quite enjoyed. All right, so that's the past. Let's look to the future. 2025. Here are some things that I'm keeping my eye on, and I'm quite interested to see how it develops. 1, Doge. No surprise there. This is going to be a huge thing, and really just like what Elon Musk is doing in general in the UK. Lots of disruption, but also chances for change. Reform is on the horizon. Efficiency. We're seeing that word everywhere. Jennifer Polka, who I've long been a fan of. She's the author of Recoding America. She's been one of the key voices on government as a platform and a lot of other really key thinking in the digital government space. She does some fantastic blogging in this, so she's the one I read to stay on top of what's happening around Doge. Number 2, the UK's Digital Centre. I did a couple videos on that. I'm going to be really curious to see how, that is the biggest play that the UK's done since the launch of GDS. And we saw how influential the launch of GDS was, some 15 years ago. Really curious to see if this play will have as much influence on that. 3, for me, is Africa. Africa's a huge place. Many countries, many experiments. I remember when I was studying democracy and politics in my undergrad, Africa was one of the most interesting places to study because they were experimenting with democracy in a way that most of the rest of the world wasn't. We sort of found we were very much entrenched with our systems, whereas Africa was, exploring no-party democracies, one-party democracies, multi-party democracies. That level of experimentation is happening as well around how the public service is run, and I'm really keen to dive deep into that this year. So hopefully I'll be able to make some make some videos on that this year. AI, I know it's cliche. There's been a lot of hype in the space, but I do believe that 2025 is going to be the year where a lot of this stuff is going to start sticking within the public service. Anyone who talks to me will know I keep saying that Copilot is what I'm really paying attention to, because that's where most public servants are going to start really interacting with AI through Copilot as part of the the digital toolkit that they have to work with in their daily lives. But AI in general, I think, is this is the year where you're going to see it start actually being practically applied in a large way within governments. And part of that as well that I'm excited about is it's also, I think, really forcing governments to rethink their data architecture. Finally, we've been talking about this forever. We need to update our data architecture. AI is going to force this forward. And then the final thing is just this video, this YouTube channel stuff that I'm doing and creating a podcast and stuff is going to be something that I'm quite interested in. It's an experiment. We'll see where it goes. I have no idea, but I'm going to have fun anyways. Anyways, that's my sort of wander through 2024 and sort of looking into 2025. I think I'm going to create some short micro versions of this as well. But this is sort of the big, long version of it. Hopefully it was enjoyable. And really what I'm curious about is what were some of your key highlights from 2024? Things that you think were really important about last year? And likewise, what are you keeping an eye on 2025? What do you think are going to be the things to watch? Just put it in the chat and I will see you at the next video.